Welcome to CrashMagic. In this video we've got a tutorial of a card trick performance that I did recently called the Amazing Unfathomable card trick performance. If you've not seen that already, I definitely recommend that you had a look at that before watching this tutorial. I'll put a link to it in the description and I'll pin it in the comments as well. As I said in that video, this is one of my absolute favourite card tricks for so many reasons. It's really easy to perform as well. There's no sleights needed or clever card handling or anything. The hardest thing that you need to do for this one is to be able to think on your feet, but it's not difficult at all, and let's get into the tutorial. So in this trick we're going to make a prediction and then we're going to force the spectator to choose a card that fulfills that prediction. But the method that we use to do this I think is really nice and deceptive. So let's see what we need. First of all, we need our prediction. So I would normally choose a card from a different coloured back, and it doesn't matter what card it is, it's up to you what card you want to force. I'm going to use the 7 of diamonds. It can be any card at all. If you haven't got another pack, of course you could just write that on a piece of paper. If you're doing a bit of a routine with a number of spectators, then earlier in the routine you might have already asked somebody what their favourite card is, in which case you could write down that card on a slip of paper. It's so nice really that you can choose any card, but we will use the 7 of diamonds for this one. So I'm going to place this in the pack, back in the packet, and we'll of course leave that packet on show while we're doing the performance. I then always put the 2 jokers on top of the pack as well, because I'm going to use those. But again, if you haven't got 2 jokers in your pack, that's no problem at all. You can use any card. You'll see at which point I use these, and they don't have to be the jokers that you use. Okay, as you know, quite often in card forces, the card that you're going to force, and for us it's the 7 of diamonds, could be anything, often that will be in a certain setup position, maybe at the top, maybe at the bottom, maybe a certain number of cards down. But again, the beauty of this trick is that card could be anywhere in the pack. This could be a borrowed pack. It can be shuffled as much as a spectator would like. And we're now going to force that 7 of diamonds from wherever it is in the pack. So once the cards have been shuffled, you then get your spectator to deal the cards face up into 3 piles. And as they're doing this, all you're doing is watching out for the 7 of diamonds and counting silently to yourself at which position it is. So here we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there we go, 9. We know that our card is in the 9th position in this pile here. So we can allow the spectator to carry on, or at this point you can also say to them, oh, if you want you can deal 2 cards or 3 cards at a time. You can deal to any card, any pile in any order, as long as the piles are roughly equal, because we already know now that the card we're trying to force is 9 cards down in this pile. Of course it could have been anywhere, and I'll show you how you can handle depending on wherever that card is. But now this is where we need to do some thinking on our feet. So at this point we would probably just spread the cards slightly under the pretense of showing the spectator, look, these are all different cards, could have been dealt in any order, you shuffled them. But what we're doing is working out how we can create some sort of formula whereby we can force this 9th card in this pile. Now there's lots of ways of doing this, and of course this card could have been anywhere, and I'll show you different ways that you can handle depending on where your card that you're trying to force is. But in this case, immediately as I was spreading these cards and reiterating to the spectator what would happen, I would be looking for cards near the top or near the bottom that I could use to make up a rule whereby we can force this card. So here we know it's 9th position down, and I can see here there's an ace of diamonds on the top. So immediately I'm thinking diamonds. If we spell diamonds, that's got 8 letters. An ace, of course, as a value counts as 1. So I'm going to use the value 1 and diamonds to spell out to force this card. And of course we'll do the same with the other piles as well. Again, you'll see what that means, and if you watch the performance you'll see what that means. So at this point now we'll collect all the piles up and place them face down. And now we're potentially going to pick 3 cards, one from each pile, using this formula that I'm going to use to force the 7 of diamonds. But at this point we've also got our first opportunity to force the exact card that we want and get the absolute best case scenario. So we would say to our spectator, pick a pile. Now if they happen to pick this pile that we know our 7 of diamonds is, this is the absolute best case scenario. What we can do is say, okay, we'll take this pile, I'm going to look at the top card and I'm going to use the value, count down to the value, and also spell out the suit. So we would turn the card over and say, oh, this is an ace of diamonds, so ace counts as 1, and then we'll spell out diamonds, D-I-A-M-O-N-D-S, gives us this card here. So we've seemingly selected a random card, but we've forced the 7 of diamonds onto them and they've chosen this pile. At this point, of course, we can then show our predicted card in the box as the 7 of diamonds, and that is the absolute perfect trick. Okay, what if they don't choose the 7 of diamonds then? So I'll leave that there, but let's pretend they don't choose that pile, they choose one of these two. Let's say they choose this pile. So again, we need to use the same rule that we know we're going to force the 7 of diamonds with. So we'll say, we're going to look at this card, we're going to count to that value and then spell out the suit. So here we've got a 6 of hearts, so we'll count 6, S-I-X, H-E-A-R-T-S. Now we'd ask them to choose another pile. This time they might choose this pile, in which case we'd turn the top card, spell it out and spell the suit, and we'd end up with our force card, the 7 of diamonds. And then of course we'd do the same with the last pile as well. We'd say, oh, this is an ace of hearts, so we'll count 1 for the ace, and hearts, H-E-A-R-T-S. So from a shuffled pack of cards that you've dealt into 3 piles, we've got 3 random cards, but of course we know we've forced the 7 of diamonds into those 3 seemingly random cards. So now comes the second place where we can possibly force that 7 of diamonds onto our spectator. Obviously, to start with, when we had the 3 piles and they picked one, if they'd have picked this one, that was the best case scenario, and there was a 1 in 3 chance of them doing that. Now we've got a 50-50 chance of again managing to force the card onto them, and we do that like this. So the 3 cards we've forced are here, our 7 of diamonds is here, that's perfect, it's on one of the edges. Ideally we want it here or here. Let's say in actual fact the force card was in the middle, we want to move it from the middle to either edge. So the best way we could do that is quite simply say, so we've selected 3 cards from the 3 piles and then place them back down, and again that's just moved the 7 of diamonds to one of the edges. So now we're in the perfect position to again use this second force to try and force that card onto them. And what we'd do, this is where I'd use the jokers. I'd say if you could take one of the jokers and if you could place it either on these 2 cards or on these 2 cards. As I say, if you haven't got jokers, don't worry, you just use one of these cards. Say take this card and place it either on these 2 or these 2. So if we use the joker, and let's say the spectator places the joker on these 2 cards, this again is the perfect scenario, because at this point we can say you've placed it on these 2, so we'll eliminate these 2, that leaves us with this card. We've now forced the 7 of diamonds onto them, and we can show our prediction of the 7 of diamonds in the pack. So of course there's a 50-50 chance of that happening, so that's good. So what with the 1 in 3 chance and now a 50-50 chance, you've got a very good chance of being able to force that card onto your spectator by now. But let's say worst case scenario happens again and they place their card here. Probably at this point you would say to them, oh, are you sure you don't want to change your mind? And there's a small chance they might change their mind, but if not, then you say, okay, you've selected to keep these 2, let's remove this one. So we've got these 2 cards left now. So now you need to force this card from the 2 onto your spectator. So as I'm sure you know, there's a few ways of doing that. There's the classic magician's force, where you could say to your spectator, if you put your finger onto one of these cards, if they happen to put their finger on that one, you say, okay, you sure? We'll remove this one then, and you of course have forced your card onto them. Or if they place their finger on this one, you say, okay, you sure it's that one? So if you take that one and we'll remove this one, and again that's forced the 7 of diamonds onto them. I particularly don't like the Magician's Force, where you have to use that force more than once in the same trick. I think it can become very obvious. In this case you're only using it once in the trick, so I don't think it's too bad at all. But even so, I think there's other forces that I prefer when you're down to a choice of 2, and I think probably what I would do instead is, if I know my card that I'm going to force is here, I would probably pick the 2 cards up, making sure that card is on the bottom, and I'd say to my spectator, can you give me any of the 4 suits, name any of the 4 suits, and whichever suit they named, I'd then spell that suit, reversing the cards as I'll show you in a second, and either spelling the suit either with or without the S to make sure it's always an odd count. So let's say, for example, I say, can you name a suit, and they say spades, so I'd spell it S-P-A-D-E, so it's got 5 letters and it's an odd number, S-P-A-D-E. That leaves that card on top. I give that to my spectator, and that's the 7 of diamonds. And as long as you make sure you spell the suit either plural or not plural to make sure it's an odd number that you spell, then that will then force your card onto them, and again you can then reveal your prediction. So that's the trick, but now I'm going to go back to, if you remember when we had the spectators dealt the 3 piles of cards, I'm going to go back and show you different ways that you could force that selection of the 7 of diamonds onto them depending on where in the pack this card was. So let's say they dealt these cards out face up, and the 7 of diamonds just happened to be the first card that they dealt out onto one of these piles. So say it was here, it was the first card they dealt onto this pile. This again is obviously a perfect situation for you, because as soon as you see that 7 of diamonds there, you know it's there on that pile. Once they'd finished dealing the piles, you would just say, that's great, you've shuffled the cards, you've dealt them out into piles, let's just turn the piles over. And then you could just take the top card from each pile. That's one of the perfect situations, of course. And of course, even before taking the card from each pile, you would attempt that force again of saying, choose one of the piles. Again, if they choose that pile, absolutely perfect, they've chosen that card and that's your force card. If they choose one of the other piles, of course, that's fine. You just say, okay, you've chosen that one, now choose another pile, now choose another pile, and again you've got your 7 of diamonds into that force of 3 cards. Okay, let's look at another scenario. What if the 7 of diamonds is, say, second card to go down in one of the piles? Again, that makes it very easy to force. So probably what I would do in this case is turn the piles over and simply say, ask them to choose which pile they want, and then say, okay, I'm going to take the top card off and deal the next card. If they chose that pile, deal the top card off, deal the next card. If they chose that pile last, put that card to the bottom, and there's the next card. And again, we of course have managed to force the 7 of diamonds into that selection. Let's look at a few other scenarios. Because ultimately the great thing about this trick is wherever the 7 of diamonds is in any of these piles, you'll be able to force it. So we've seen that if it's here, top, that's perfect. If it's here, that's fine. Of course, if it's at the bottom, that's great as well. If it was at the bottom, definitely wouldn't want to leave that unshowed for too long, but you would just quickly pick the piles up, turn them over, and then as they selected each pile, say, right, we'll take the bottom card off each pile, which would of course force that one. Let's say in this scenario the 7 of diamonds goes down and it ends up being the last but one card in one of the piles. So again, that makes it really easy. What you can do then is, as you collect the piles up, is if you pick the bottom card and you use that to pick the pile up, like so, that of course then leaves the 7 of diamonds on the bottom of the pile. So then when you force the 3 cards, you can say, oh, we'll just take the bottom card of each pile, and that will again force the 7 of diamonds. Let's look at a few more slightly more complicated positions that it could be. But again, it's so easy to force the 7 of diamonds wherever it is. So we've looked at if it's at the top, second from top, bottom, second from bottom. Let's say it is, let's say it's in this position, third position. So again, once the piles were dealt, I would be spreading the cards out, and just as I was reiterating to the spectator, look, you've dealt the cards, you shuffled them, you've dealt them into these piles, I would be thinking quickly how I could force that 7 of diamonds. So in this case, we've got a 2 on the top. So immediately I know I could spell out 2, T-W-O, and in that way force the third card. Well, the other thing, of course, if it's in, say, the third position, you could think to yourself, well, we'll spell out the colour of the top card of each pile. So in this case, that would be red, R-E-D. Let's say it was in the fourth position. Again, really simple to do. You could again use the colour red or the spelling of 2, because you could spell out T-W-O and take the next card as one of the 3, or spell out red, R-E-D, and take the next card, so in which case you've forced the fourth card. Let's say it was in the fifth position. So now that top card is a heart, so you could say I'm going to turn over the top card and I'm going to spell out the suit, H-E-A-R-T, that's how you spell heart, and then you would force the 7 of diamonds. Again, as you've seen before, if you put it in the next position, we could do exactly the same, spell out heart and take the next card, or we could spell out hearts. There's so many combinations of how you could use the value of the card, or the spelling of the number of the card, or the spelling of the suit, with or without plural, and take the card that it lands on, or the next card. That means that wherever your card is that you're trying to force in your pile, there's always a way of being able to spell to that position and force that card. Well, I hope that tutorial was clear. As I say, it is really simple, and this method of being able to select a card to force, although it looks difficult, as you're spreading the cards out and you're explaining, with just a bit of practice you can quickly see, based on the cards that are around, how you can force a card in any position within a couple of seconds, no problem at all. Well, that's the end of this video. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe. If you've got any comments, leave them down below, and see you soon.